first beluga to be both conceived and born in a Canadian aquarium. She was born to Aurora in this water on July 23rd in 1995. So 3 generations of females with the adopted matriarch there, sort of a cadna. But
Beluga nga eh, beluga ibang klase.
Sort of family, and you might have already gotten the idea that they
Beluga, but
are different than most other dolphins out there.
Beluga.
One pretty big difference is the coloration, but another pretty big difference is just how big they are. Not necessarily just length, but kind of around the middle. Because I'm sure you've noticed these belugas, they're kind of big. But what is it exactly that is wiggling and jiggling all around Keela right now? Anyone? Blubber or fat? Yes, absolutely. These belugas, they have a lot of blubber. About 40 to 50% of their body weight is made up of fat. But it's a great strategy to stay warm. But of course, it's not the only strategy they have to stay warm. If you take a look at those pectoral or side flippers and their tail flukes, you'll notice that Keela's waving right now. You'll notice that they don't have any blubber covering them, but they are a little bit on the smaller side as compared to other whales and dolphins. That smaller tail that we see there from Keela is actually a great strategy again to stay warm. Because let's think about it. When you go outside during the winter, what parts of your body tend to get coldest the first? Yeah, your hands, your feet, your nose, your extremities. The same is absolutely true of these belugas. So having smaller extremities helps ensure that less of their body is exposed to that cold water around them. Now, because these tail flukes are a little bit on the smaller side, it does mean that, yeah, these belugas, they're not like the fastest swimmers you've ever seen, but those tails are still pretty powerful. If you'd like to get a demonstration of that, just keep your eye on Keela here up front. She's going to show off a beluga leap. If you're ready, here she comes! You didn't sound that impressed. We're going to try this again. One more time, here she comes! Beluga leap! Thank you. Gotta say though, still not the same kind of reaction I hear for our dolphins when they do similar leaps. Sure, it looks different, but I ask you this, how high would you jump with a mattress of fat wrapped around you? So Keela actually did do a very good job, maybe even more impressive than what those dolphins do. I think she deserves a nice big round of applause. But as well adapted as these belugas are for the cold, they do, of course, have to address some other pretty important issues, like the fact that they're surrounded in snow and ice. Now, the coloration that we see in the adults is one great hint to an adaptation to deal with all of that snow and ice, but another great adaptation is their backs. If you take a look at Aurora towards the center there, she's showing off her back quite nicely for us. You might notice that it looks different than most other whales and dolphins, because most whales and dolphins have what along their backs? A dorsal fin, absolutely. Now, instead, these belugas have a dorsal ridge. By not having a dorsal fin, it allows them to more easily move and maneuver underneath the ice. So they can actually get into cracks and crevices that animals with those big, tall dorsal fins like killer whales, a predator of theirs, cannot. So again, that ice does provide them a pretty important place of protection. And that ice is important not just to them, but for pretty much all the other animals in the Arctic as well. And because it is so important to this area, scientists and researchers have been keeping track of ice levels in the Arctic for the past 30 years or so. And what they've been noticing is that lately, there's not as much ice as there used to be. In fact, this past January and February were the lowest ice level records for any January and February previous. Now, why do scientists think there might be less of that ice? Well, just as these belugas have the right amount of blubber around their bodies to keep them nice and warm, the Earth's atmosphere has the right combination of gases to keep Earth a hospitable place for all of us to live. And as we continue to burn fossil fuels, that's coals, gasolines, diesels for energy, we're actually thickening that blanket of gases in the Earth's atmosphere, kind of like wrapping a great big blanket around Earth and causing things to change. And nowhere else is this change being felt more than up in the Arctic. We know that that's definitely going to have an impact on the lives of these belugas. And let's face it, they've got enough challenges as it is, because not only is it cold, but for much of the year it can be incredibly dark. And if you've got a beluga family like this one, how are they supposed to keep track of a 2-year-old when they can't see her? Adults, you know it's hard enough when you can see the 2-year-old. So what strategy do these belugas have? Well, maybe we might be able to get a bit of a hint. Here's Keela, here's Aurora, and Katha. That's a pretty great sound and a great hint on part of our belugas. Yeah, let's give them a round of applause. But yes, that's exactly what these belugas can use to keep track of one another in that darkness. They can use sound. And all of these different sounds we've just heard probably give you a better idea as to why these animals have been referred to as canaries of the sea. They make some pretty interesting sounds, but not just for communication, and that's the sort of sounds we heard right here, but they'll make a lot of sounds for echolocation as well. Echolocation is kind of like animal sonar. They can send out a series of high-pitched clicks from within their heads, which bounce off objects like ice and fish. And by listening to these echoes as they return, belugas can pretty accurately determine the distance and shape of the objects that are around them. And to help them out with echolocation, belugas can use their forehead-like region. That's that area right in front there that you've probably noticed is pretty big and sort of, well, goofy looking. Take a look at Keela's here up front, though she might take offense to that goofy looking. It does look a bit different than most males of dolphins, doesn't it? You can see Keela moving around her melon right now. Part of why it looks a bit different, let's not say, not goofy, but different, is that that area is filled with a fatty, waxy substance that aids in echolocation. By moving that melon around and changing the shape of it, it helps them to direct and focus the sounds they produce. Much like twisting the head of a flashlight helps focus a beam of light.
Yeah, I know.
But of course, it's not dark in the Arctic all year round. Eventually, summer is going to come about. With summer, you get a whole lot more sunlight. It's going to cause temperatures to increase and the ice to sort of retreat, new feeding grounds to open up. And belugas are going to appreciate that as rather opportunistic feeders. And to help tell us a bit more about that is Julie here on my right.
Thanks, Keely. I'll give everybody a wave so you can see where I'm standing. I'm working with Tika today. And beluga whales are known to be opportunistic hunters. And what that means is that they'll prey on a variety of different items. Here at the aquarium, we feed our belugas herring, caitlin, salmon, and squid. But out in the ocean, when fish may not be in great abundance, belugas will also be on the lookout for items such as worms and clams, two particular prey items that bury themselves down in the sandy bottom. Now, as we've seen throughout this session, belugas don't have hands like we do, which means they simply can't dive and start to dig around. So instead, they've developed a bit of a different feeding tactic. Belugas have nice flexible lips, and they also have the ability to hold large quantities of water in their mouth. And when you combine those